Greetings. This is your host, Brother Jumoke Ifetayo. Time for reparations, the sounds of blackness. And it is time for reparations. So today we're sitting here in the month of August. Well, before I do that, I want you to take a minute and pause. And if you're listening, to go ahead and subscribe to this channel, like, you can leave us a comment during the show. So as I said, we're sitting here in the month of August, which is called Black August by our African activists, new African activists coming from the prison system. And so we're going to unpack that a little bit more. But what the main arching concern today is that political prisoners, prisoners of war, and even those in exile are a top demand in the reparations movement. Often reference the fact that when I came into the reparations movement, I came in through NCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, and most of the people in that formation in those early days in the 80s and 90s were Black nationalists and Pan-Africanists and freedom fighters. And they had comrades of theirs who had been locked up since the 60s and 70s, and some of them even still in jail today, who were freedom fighters who were fighting on behalf of Black people. And because they were fighting on behalf of Black people, many of them were arrested, some of them were killed, some of them were arrested, and so this is, as you study reparations and look at it from an international perspective, and you look at what other people demand, we cannot be talking about anything that we want for ourselves and not demand that our political prisoners, those who fought for us, are released from prison. That has to be one of our priority demands. Many people don't know, for example, that when the Japanese received reparations from being in internment camps, not only were they given $20,000 each, not only was there a fund that was set up to educate Americans about what happened to them. But there was also the release of their political prisoners, or those people who resisted going into the internment camps, who were put in jail. And those people were pardoned and released. And so likewise, as we engage in the conversation of reparations of those of us in African descent, we definitely also call for the release of our political prisoners and prisoners of war, and those in exile. And those in exile are those, meaning those people who left the United States because of legal challenges that they were dealing with because of the oppression of this country. And like, for example, Sada, who we'll talk about later on, who was broken out of jail and ended up in Cuba. Sometimes they're not even sure if they really want to come back to the United States. Of course, they miss their family and their friends. They miss certain things about African-American culture. But Asada herself says she's not really sure if she even wants to come back to the United States, knowing that it has not changed that much, as well as another person in exile who we know, Pete O'Neill, who's also a Black Panther Party leader. And, I think I heard him say in his documentary, he doesn't even want to come back to the United States, although his wife does come back and forth to the United States to raise money for them and to continue to lift up the call for supporting of political prisoners and those in exile as well. So one of the people that has a really phenomenal story in our movement as a political prisoner, prisoner of war, is a brother named Sekou Odinga. And Sekou Odinga was, after spending 30 years in jail, was released on the November 25th, 2014. And he recently made his transition on January 12th of this year, 2024. And I was blessed to hear him speak several times, actually speak and say some opening remarks at an event before he spoke. And so we want to just listen to him talk about the role of political prisoners and support for political prisoners and prisoners of war.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. I bear witness there is no God but God, and Muhammad was his last prophet and slave servant. My name is Sekou Odinga, and I am a former member of the Black Panther Party and a former political prisoner of war. I was released on parole on November 25th, 2014, after serving 33 years in prison. In October 1981, I was captured and charged with multiple so-called crimes by two jurisdictions, New York State and the U.S. federal government. Among them was aiding in the liberation of Assata Shakur, the expropriation of an armored truck, and the attempted murder of police. For those who don't know who Assata Shakur is, in 1973, she was a 25-year-old revolutionary woman riding on the New Jersey Turnpike with two of her close revolutionary comrades when they were stopped and attacked by New Jersey state troopers. Assata was shot in the back with her hands in the air as she had been ordered to do by the troopers. An all-white jury found her guilty of the death of one of the attacking troopers, killed with his own gun, and sentenced to life in prison. Prior to that, she had been tortured and tried numerous times on multiple charges, where she was always either found not guilty or the trial ended in a hung jury. An opportunity presented itself for us to free Assata Shakur, a political prisoner who we felt was unjustly imprisoned, so we did that. I felt good about the opportunity. I felt good about the opportunity to do this, but there was some nervousness in knowing what we were doing was dangerous and would be viewed as a criminal act. We knew the powers that be would try to stop us. We were doing something that had never been done successfully in our movement before. We thought our chances of being successful were good based on our planning, but we felt like it was our responsibility to do this. At the time, I was a soldier of the Black Liberation Army. The Black Liberation Army was part of the Black Liberation Movement. The Black Liberation Army saw itself as a protector and defender of the Black community and against constant police terror, violence, and murder. As a young activist, I was inspired by Malcolm X and thought it necessary that the Black community have a self-defense response and capability against the rampant poverty, hunger, injustice, and state violence. I was found guilty in federal court of the liberation of Assata Shakur and expropriation of an armored truck. I was sentenced to 40 years and fined $50,000 fines on those two charges. For defending myself by shooting back at police, I was found guilty of attempted murder of police in state court and sentenced to 25 years to life to run separately from the 40 years. I was fortunate that I wasn't murdered in the street, as happened to my close friend and comrade, Tayari Sundiata, who was with me when I was captured. It was her involvement in the Black Liberation Movement that led to Assata being criminalized and imprisoned. That is how and why she became a political prisoner of war. Today, I want to speak a little more about political prisoners in the U.S. What or who is a political prisoner? A political prisoner is someone arrested and convicted for their political activity, their political thoughts, ideas, words, or support. You might be thinking no one becomes a political prisoner in the U.S. The truth is, anyone organizing or struggling for their people can become a target for political imprisonment if the powers that be consider them a threat. An example of this is Assata Shakur. Another example is Sundiata Acoli, who was with Assata Shakur during that New Jersey Turnpike incident I mentioned earlier. Both were members of the Black Panther Party who got up 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to feed school children before they went to school. Sometimes it was the only good meal they had all day. Both worked to help welfare mothers get the assistance they were entitled. Both worked on community housing, political education, and health programs. Assata is a graduate of BMCC CUNY, and before joining the Black Panther Party, she worked in a hospital. Sundiata is a mathematician who worked at NASA, helping to teach math to future astronauts. Assata has been living in exile in Cuba for almost 40 years and is admired as a legendary freedom fighter in social justice movements around the world. Sundiata is 80 years old and continues to be held in a federal prison facility and has been denied parole numerous times. Political prisoners were targeted by COINTELPRO, the FBI's counterintelligence program that worked with local police to monitor, infiltrate, attack, and in some cases, kill activists. Fred Hampton and Mark Clark from Chicago are such examples. Hampton was the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. In 1969, the Chicago Police Department sent an informant agent into Fred's home to drug him. Then the police, along with the FBI, came and shot up the house, murdering Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in their sleep. These are established facts revealed in the lawsuit the family won against the city of Chicago, Cook County, and the federal government. Today, COINTELPRO continues under Homeland Security, the Patriot Act, and national security agencies, etc., whereby activists are still targeted, monitored, and entrapped. Recently, the FBI's Counterterrorism Division has declared, quote, Black identity extremists as threats, end quote, which can include anyone fighting to protect Black lives. Like many of you, our political prisoners were young activists when they got involved with the struggle for the survival and freedom of their people. Jalil Muttaqin was only 19 years old when he was captured and imprisoned for fighting for his people. Today, he is a senior citizen who has endured the last 46 years of his life in prison. He is one of the longest held political prisoners in the world, but he hasn't given up. He continues to believe that freedom-loving Americans will do the right thing by standing up and demanding that he and other political prisoners be released. Enough is enough. Let's get together and demand their freedom. As Che Guevara says, a true revolutionary is motivated by great love for the people. This is especially true of our political prisoners who continue to struggle to make the world a better place despite being behind bars. Jalil Muttaqin initiated an international human rights program. 15 or so years ago, Herman Bell co-created a community garden program that still distributes local produce to people. Dr. Mutulu Shakur continues to motivate and organize people to establish alternative health care in their communities. All our political prisoners continue to be concerned and involved in what's going on in our communities. Of course, the U.S. government has claimed and continue to claim that the United States has no political prisoners, but that's clearly a lie. All freedom struggles against oppressive governments produce political prisoners. This is a historical fact. We can go back as far as Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, who was himself a political prisoner of the Roman Empire. Just as Leonard Peltier, Afia Siddiqui, and 13 members of the Black Panther Party are political prisoners of the U.S. Empire. Our political prisoners are sentenced to long, indeterminate sentences, with most serving up to and more than 30 to 50 years in prison. It is the state's intent to take these political prisoners who would dare to struggle away from the masses and lock them up for decades to keep their revolutionary example hidden. I think it is important for people to know that political prisoners are part of movements. They do not exist in a vacuum. Political prisoners come from the American Indian movement, the Black Liberation movement, the Puerto Rican independence movement, the white anti-imperialist movement, and every other movement for human rights. These movements have been criminalized by the United States. This means we have a stake in knowing and supporting political prisoners. If we don't, how can we expect our youth to join in the struggle to make the world a better place if they know that they will probably be forgotten if arrested and imprisoned for struggling? Recently, we saw Obama recognize U.S. held political prisoners when he released Oscar Lopez Rivera and Chelsea Manning as he exited the office of president. But this is an anomaly. What we usually see are the political forces of the state lined up against the release of our political prisoners. The New Jersey Parole Board appealed the court-ordered release of Sundiata Acoli all the way to the state Supreme Court and imposed a 15-year wait before he can reappear again when he is 95 years old. In New York, Robert Seth Hayes, Jalil Mutakim, and Herman Bell all have been denied the parole more than 6-7 times. And despite being granted parole, Veronza Bowles is still held in a federal facility because Alberto Gonzales, Attorney General under George W. Bush, imposed himself in the parole process, instructing the prison warden not to release him. That was more than 12 years ago, and Veronza is still being held today. This is illegal because Veronza has finished his time and is now serving time without any charges or any conviction. But the prison, the courts, law enforcement, the politicians, and we, the people ourselves, have all allowed this criminal act to stand. Those who struggle to help me make my freedom a reality became like family to me. Some of them were very young at the time. They were with me as they grew up, had children, and their children relate to me as I am part of their family today. I am Baba Sekou to them. It is a real, inspiring, and loving relationship. They have shown much love for me, and I love them very much. They helped me survive my imprisonment and gain my freedom. Without them, I wouldn't be here today. Let's all become educated and stand up for our political prisoners. Visit the JerichoMovement.com for addresses to right political prisoners. And if you can, send money. Join Jericho. Join the Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition and or other political prisoner support committees. Challenge the myth that political prisoners and prisoners of war don't exist in the U.S. among your friends and networks, and call for the release and freedom of political prisoners and prisoners of war. Nowhere in the world do freedom and justice-loving people struggling against oppression forget their freedom fighters, forget their political prisoners. We must stand up for our political prisoners and prisoners of war and demand their release. We need their strength, knowledge, and commitment out here working with us to make this a better world. We have a responsibility not to forget those who fought for us. We owe that to them and their families because they sacrificed so much for us. That's the least we can do for them. Let's free all our political prisoners and prisoners of war. Freedom of all.
Yes, Sekou Odinga. And he has a personal fascinating story about how he dodged the police one time and they tried to capture him. But anyway, I just wanted to, that piece is a little bit dated because several people actually have been released since that piece that he did. Herman Bell was released in 2018. Jalil Mutakim was released October 7, 2020. And Veronza Bowers was recently released this year, May 7, 2024. And so they're beginning to get out. Many of them, though, very up in age when they're finally released. And we still have to continue to push for others. I just wanted to say that, our political prisoners has also influenced artists and some of our hip hop artists and things like that. There was before Sekou Odinga was released, I came across a CD. Well, that's dated, right? A CD that was of different hip hop artists and poets and activists that was put together to raise awareness about Sekou Odinga and to help to, again, get more support, to garner more support to get him out. And I'm not sure how long that CD had been out, but I know that once I bought it, it seemed like it was like just a year or so later that he was released. And I know there was a lot of work that went behind it, not just the CD. But I just thought it's, just too important to lift up how, people like Tupac Shakur, who's influenced by Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who just recently transitioned, got out of jail for maybe about 6 or 7 months before he transitioned, but did get out for a period and was Tupac's godfather. And so, and others have been influenced by our political prisoners, and they've been lifted up in hip hop and other music. So just wanted to, so we're going to, in honor of that, we're going to play a song by M1 of Dead Prayers called Be Sekou.
M1 in the building. Freedom ain't free. Pay the cost. Look. You gotta be like him or be like her. The revolution gonna reoccur. Be Sekou, be Jalil. Who really wanna get free for real? Be a soldier, be a rebel. Who wanna take it to another level? Be a G, be a LA. If you want some liberation, better start today. Don't be like Mike, you gotta be like Fred Hampton. That's right, that's what I said. You gotta be the Honda, be your Sada. Baby in the right with black power, mama. Don't be no snitch, and don't be no pig. The comrades come and get you, snitch away. Let's be yourself, that's enough. What you really wanna be when you grow up? Everybody wanna be a star today. So much going on in the galaxy. Jimmy said he wanna be a rapper, but have you ever thought of being an adapter? 10 years from now, will you be able to change? Will you love the game and will you think the same? Will you think I ain't fucking with no capitalism? You don't pay your taxes and you throw you in prison? What you really know about sacrifice? Giving your life, paying the price. The price of freedom is death sometimes. Better that than dumb, deaf, and blind. Make a weak heart lose breath and mind. Huey P. Newton came just in time. So I'ma be like him. I'm getting it in until they open the pen because we destined to win. Hasta Victoria siempre. I am Fidel, I am Che. I am Toussaint, I'm Cinque. Us revolutionary sensei. See, I work for the people. The streets is my office. So Uncle Sam, keep your damn hands up off us. It's about to be a riot from the worker to the bosses. Obama gon' just double cross us. Fuck him, you gotta be like him or be like her. The revolution gonna reoccur. Be Sekou, be Jalil. Who really wanna get free for real? Be a soldier, be a rebel. Who wanna take it to another level? Be a G, be a LA. If you want some liberation, better start today. Be free, like a breeze in the ocean. Be free to be who and where you wanna be. Yeah, I wanna be free like Frida. As I said Frida, see so much freedom every time I see her. She painted pictures, she saw herself. She painted the revolution that she saw herself. And that's real, change that's real. When you think of revolution, how does it feel? Would you risk your life or kill? Or sit in the cell like Sekou and Jalil? Brought it back for the cause. I did it all for the cause. Stay in tune with the sun and the moon. Got so much love for Russell Maroon. That's Swalsh, he's the boss. 39 years behind them walls. 22 years without no calls. Banging on the system till they free them all. Tu Lolita Lebron. Viva la revolución. Siempre mi corazón. It's cause of you I fight on. You got to be like you, don't be like them. Don't be no phony, don't be my friend. Just be right there when I need you. Oscar, we fight till they free you. You gotta be like him or be like her. The revolution gonna reoccur. Be Sekou, be Jalil. Who really wanna get free for real? Be a soldier, be a rebel. Who wanna take it to another level? Be a G, be a LA. If you want some liberation, better start today.
But if you're looking for a hero, don't look any further. You're the revolutionary, but you still can't murder. The revolution is absolute. Because the revolution has come for our daughters and sons. Free Sekou from in jail. Oh we gon' give them hell.
Gonna be like him, I'll be like her. The revolution gonna reoccur. We say cool, be Jalil. Who really wanna get free for real? Be a soldier, be a rebel. Who wanna take it to another level? Be a G, be a late. If you want some liberation, better start today.
Yes, we have to continue to use our music and our culture to get the word out about our political prisoners and our demand to have them released. At this point now, we're going to, Brother Sekou talked about, and I think I just want to lift up one point I think that was very powerful in what he said, is that if our young people, young activists, people coming into the movement don't see us fighting for people that were arrested and in jail, then that would be very discouraging to think that they're fighting for us, they get arrested, and people will forget about them and just let them languish in jail. So we definitely have to let organizers and activists and let our people know that we are fighting for our political prisoners and prisoners of war to get them out of jail, and those who are in exile if they choose to want to return to America. So right now we're going to get a little bit more of the deeper into the story of Sister Assata Shakur.
Assata Shakur, and I was born and raised in the United States. I am a descendant of Africans who were kidnapped and brought to the Americas as slaves. I spent my early childhood in the racist segregated South. I later moved to the northern part of the country, where I realized that Black people were equally victimized by racism and oppression. I grew up and became a political activist, participating in student struggles, the anti-war movement, and most of all, in the movement for the liberation of African Americans in the United States. I later joined the Black Panther Party, an organization that was targeted by the COINTELPRO program, a program that was set up by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to eliminate all political opposition to the U.S. government's policies, to destroy the Black liberation movement in the United States, to discredit activists, and to eliminate potential leaders. Under the COINTELPRO program, many political activists were harassed, imprisoned, murdered, or otherwise neutralized. As a result of being targeted by COINTELPRO, I, like many other young people, was faced with the threat of prison, underground, exile, or death. The FBI, with the help of local police agencies, systematically fed false accusations and fake news articles to the press, accusing me and other activists of crimes we did not commit. Although in my case, the charges were eventually dropped or I was eventually acquitted, the national and local police agencies created a situation where, based on their false accusations against me, any police officer could shoot me on sight. It was not until the Freedom of Information Act was passed in the mid-70s that we began to see the scope of the United States government's persecution of political activists. I have advocated, and I still advocate, revolutionary changes in the structure and in the principles that govern the United States. I advocate self-determination for my people and for all oppressed people inside the United States. I advocate an end to capitalist exploitation, the abolition of racist policies, the eradication of sexism, and the elimination of political repression. If that is a crime, then I am totally guilty. To make a long story short, I was captured in New Jersey in 1973 after being shot with both arms held in the air and then shot again from the back. I was left on the ground to die, and when I did not, I was taken to a local hospital where I was threatened, beaten, and tortured. In 1977, I was convicted in a trial that can only be described as a legal lynching. In 1979, I was able to escape with the aid of some of my fellow comrades. I saw this as a necessary step, not only because I was innocent of the charges against me, but because I knew that the racist legal system in the United States, I would receive no justice. I was also afraid that I would be murdered in prison. I later arrived in Cuba, where I am currently living in exile as a political refugee. The New Jersey State Police and other law enforcement officials say they want to see me brought to justice. But I would like to know what they mean by justice. Is torture justice? I was kept in solitary confinement for more than 2 years, mostly in men's prisons. Is that justice? My lawyers were threatened with imprisonment and imprisoned. Is that justice? I was tried by an all-white jury without even the pretext of impartiality and then sentenced to life in prison plus 33 years. Is that justice? Let me emphasize that justice for me is not the issue I am addressing here. It is justice for my people that is at stake. When my people receive justice, I am sure that I will receive it too.
Yeah, so those are the words of Assata Shakur. The context of that actually is that I think they said that the Pope was coming to Cuba, and that was a message that she delivered to the Pope. So, so we want to, at this point, just give a little bit of background into Black August. There's 4 themes to Black August. The real message of Black August is really recommitting ourselves to the movement. I don't like to use the word struggle. Recommitting ourselves to African liberation, recommitting ourselves to fighting, to pushing back against the oppression that we find ourselves a part of. So starting in the 70s, you had several incidences that happened in California prison. You had Jonathan Jackson attempting to break his brother out of jail, and he was murdered during that altercation. And then his brother subsequently was murdered some years later. But before he was murdered, he was able to put down a lot of his ideas in a book called Soul Dad Brother. And then that book became an inspiration for other brothers inside the prison. So they decided to dedicate the month of August as a month of fasting and discipline. So during the daylight hours, they would fast. This is what's still encouraged people to do. Is a 4-part to how to honor Black August. So fast. Number 2 is study. So people are challenged to increase their study about the movement, particularly about political prisoners, about people who led revolutions in their country, people like Fidel Castro, people like Kwame Nkrumah, people like Assata Shakur and others, Dr. Mario Obadeli, and many others who led insurrections, who fought for freedom and independence in their nation. So that's part of the study. So you become more and more knowledgeable about that. But studying also, then the next one is train. Ideally, you can do this by yourself, but ideally it works when you're training with others. For example, you saw in one video, you saw them doing martial arts. So training is again, intensifying whatever exercise that you do, taking it up a notch in the month of August. If you run 2 miles, run 6 miles, whatever it is. But train to prepare your body to be a more fit soldier, whether that is, like I said, through exercise, through martial arts, or whatever discipline. And then the last part of the 4 parts for how you honor Black August is fight. And that is up to you how you do that. But the idea is that engage in some kind of way to help to bring us closer to our freedom and our liberation, to fight back against oppression. And, there's many ways that could be done. We encourage people, again, to do that through an organization because there's more power and strength in numbers. So we encourage you to work through a formation to do that. The Malcolm X grassroots movement is the one of the organizations that's really been strong at keeping the idea of Black August alive. And they have various chapters around the United States, and they do stuff online where they have study sessions, where they have training. And so that's one way that you can get in more engaged. And as we begin to wind this down, because I know in the past I've talked about political prisoners, prison war. I just thought, while we're sitting here in Black August, it'd be good to really hear more from them, hear their voices, and people get a little bit more familiar with them. So we're going to close out with hearing from Brother Jaleel Mutakeen, again, who was recently released a few years ago. And we hope to bring him on our show and do a full interview with him at some point in the near future. Just found out somebody, a comrade that has direct access to him. And so we hope to be able to bring him in at some time in the future. But right now we'll listen to some of this, of him speaking. Brother Jaleel Mutakeen video, please.
Right, inside these institutions or these slave camps, right, exorbitant profits for free labor. Hey, now I'm speaking to the labor movement now. We're going to talk about free labor. Right? How come y'all not fighting against the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution that allows some penal slavery in the United States? How come we're not, as an organization, right, Teamsters, right, building a campaign to end the 13th Amendment? Now, I'll let you know. There's a campaign. There's a campaign called 13 Forward. Google it, right? Yeah, 13 Forward. I'm an organizer 13 Forward in my city of Rochester, New York. Right? And we're building the foundation for which we end penal slavery and ensure that we don't want to go too far off. I go so many different places, but 13 Forward is ultimate goal and objective is to change the mentality of the judicial system of mass incarceration. Mass incarceration, yes, there's a such thing as mass incarceration. They want to continue to ensure that there's a capacity for which they can reap exorbitant profits from our black behinds.
Yes.
I'm going to take that away. From our labor. All right?
You with family.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right? We are family. All right? Because when they look at us, they don't look at me as a Muslim. They look at you as a Christian. Right? They go as black. That's it. All right? And we have to understand that in terms of all the divisions that we have to overcome. All right? So 13 Forward is a campaign to end penal slavery. And when we end penal slavery, we change the mentality of those on the inside. So now they get up in the morning, right? So we're going to demand to have at least minimum wage for their labor. Right? So they get up in the morning, they go to work, they valued. They get compensated for their labor. What's going to happen when they come home?
Still do the same thing.
They don't get a job.
Yeah,
They've been trained. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I did 49 years, but I was the other side of it. That's still, I was fighting that. So they come home, they get a job. They start taking care of their babies, right? Take care of their families. That's what they do on the inside. So we changed the mentality from a prisoner to an incarcerated worker. He's an incarcerated worker now, right? And this is part of the process we go towards the struggle of abolishing the entire system, right? Tactical issues, tactical methodology in which we begin how we fight back, right, on the system, right? So it's important for me to share with you the necessity for the Teamsters, for the unions, and you ask the question, right, what can we do to become our own liberators, right? One part of that aspect is to join the struggle to end penal slavery in this country, right, as unions. And we begin, and as part of that process, beside these penal slavery institutions, began to cultivate individuals and to train individuals so that when they come out, they have a job for them. Come back into the union. We grow. We build. You understand what I'm saying? You have to be tactical. You have to be tactical in our strategic goal. Now, what is the strategic goal? Right? I'm going back to Martin and Malcolm.
There you go.
Strategic goal. Right?
I like that.
Martin, strategic goal was integration, and unfortunately, a word that I don't like using, but unfortunately, many of us have done so, assimilation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We've assimilated.
Yes, sir.
Assimilate into a system that hates us.
Yes.
Many of us believe in let's get along, let's go along, get along.
Oh, wait, I want to push you a little bit. So, growing up, I felt that I had to choose between Brother Malcolm and Brother Martin.
Yes.
But then my father said to me, who was a historian, have you read their speeches? And two of the speeches that he gave to me was I've made it to the mountaintop and the Ballad of the Bull. And when you read those two speeches, you know, when you get beyond the mainstream, you will see how similar Malcolm and Martin are, because by the time Dr. King was being assassinated in Chaos and Community, where do we go from here? That is not the King that is put out on TV. Like Justin reminded us this past week, next week is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington.
Sure.
And people talk about the dream. The dream's not tangible. They don't talk about the first 22 minutes about the insufficient check that he was coming to get. And then they don't talk about that. So how mainstream media and how mainstream history tries to divide us as a people. So how, as an organization, do we combat the divide and conquer? Because no, we have to leave here united to go out and do this work. So how, as an organization, do we fight against divide and conquer and move as a unit and as individuals, so like you see, build and uplift our community?
Okay, great, good question.
Real good question.
I want to answer that question this way, right? As many of you know, Malcolm criticized the March on Washington, right? They had what they call the Big Six, right? Who organized the March on Washington, and they called them in to Washington, D.C. to discuss this march. And what happened to it? Because remember, the March from Washington was for jobs.
Jobs and freedom.
Jobs and freedom, right? And it came out to become a dream, right? It ended up becoming a dream. And what did Malcolm say about that, right? It was black originally. It was strong originally. And then what they do? They lighten it up. They put some coffee. They put some cream in that coffee, right? And it changed the whole dynamics of what the March on Washington was. It's about black freedom. So let's understand something in regards to that issue. It's important that we stand on the principles for which we are moving towards and not allow those, the colonialists, right, the colonizers, to integrate our movement or influence our movement or water down our movement, right? And it goes back to the idea of what is our goals and objectives, right? Not only tactically, but strategically. Right? I may mention the issues of sovereignty, right? I also identify myself as a new African. What does that mean? That means that I identify myself and I have not been identified by my colonizers. We've been named everything except children of God.
Okay, that's right.
Huh? Is that right?
Yeah.
What's a Negro? Right. What's a queen? What's the N-word?
Yeah.
Right? Right. What's an American? some of us are, we are in a mentality state of mind where we call ourselves African American. But America has never been in support of Africa. If you know what's going on in Africa today, with the Afro-Con in Nigeria, right? They're trying to recolonize Africa. America has never been in support of Africa, except for export its resources, its labor and its resources, and yet we identify ourselves as American or African American. So we have a split personality here.
So to that point,
let me just finish this. I appreciate it, Professor. I don't want to be disrespectful.
You're speaking the truth, brother. Go ahead.
But it's important for us to recognize who we are as African people. All right? And I'll just give you a short story, a very short story on that. My mom was a student of African dance as a young woman. And she used to teach my sister and I African dance. And her teachers used to tell her, say, you're African. So that's what she taught us as a child. Right? We are African. Right? We are descendants of Africans. Right? We're not a Negro. We're not a coon. We're not an N-word. We're not any of the derogatory names that have been imposed upon us. Right? And we're African. Right? And that's how I was raised in my household. So my vision, my world vision was that I'm an African, and everything outside of that, as far as I'm concerned, was an acquisition to my very existence, my identity of myself. Right? And so I was raised in that era of the 60s and 70s movement with the idea, 50s, 60s, and 70s movement with the idea that I'm an African. And opposing a system that opposes my very existence, my identity of who I am as a person, as a human being. All right? And so for us, it's important now to have evolved where I identify myself as New African, because there's a movement to build what we call Republic of New Africa. Right? I talk about sovereignty. How come we're not sovereign? How come? Because we have not raised our consciousness to the degree of we understand ourselves as a nation, within a nation, an oppressed nation within a nation. We're not there yet. That's where we need to go. All right? We, brothers and sisters, listen to me. We've been colonized by the British, by the Portuguese, by the Spanish, by the Dutch. All right? We speak all those languages. All right? And our diaspora. We speak all those languages. Who says we don't have the obligation or the right to speak in regards to what is going on in our country or in this country and around the world from our voice? We have a voice to live around the world. Our greatest organizer is Marcus Garvey. Right, you know that, huh, bro? Appreciate that, man. Marcus Garvey. He organizes in Africa, the Caribbean, here in the United States, and Britain. That's why that knucklehead, J. Edgar Hoover, right, at the time he was an agent, because we don't know this history, he was an agent, he's the one that was investigating and created conditions for markets to be sent out and exported out of the country, right?
Yes, one of the things that was shared with me is that one of the benefits of having some of our political prisoners in jail is that they have become sort of like the intellectual guiding posts in giving us ideas and how to move forward. Leo Mutakin, for example, has written at least 4 books, and you can hear him. He's a very clear theoretician, very clear on his knowledge and information, and there's been others like Dr. Matul Shakur and others who, even though while they were in prison, came up with ideas and programs and things to help to advance the movement. Some of our leaders were killed, but some of them were imprisoned. And so we lost a lot in a sense of losing that connection to them. And so again, and I also just wanted to add in terms of Black August, one of the things that's also associated with Black August is that if we look historically, and I talked about fight as the 4th area, we see that there's been it just seems to happen in the month of August. It is one of the times that been the height of resistance around in the Black community. We could start with the Haitian Revolution, which was started in August. We could talk about the fact that Marcus Mosiah Garvey, not only his birthday is August 17th, but for the whole month of August, the UNIA-ACL convened in New York and laid out his plans, laid out the flag, laid out his officers, laid out his constitution, and did all of that for the whole entire month of August. We could talk about Gabriel Prosser's insurrection was in August. Nat Turner's insurrection was in August. The March of Washington was in August. And there's other things that we can lift up that happened in August. But so this hot month of August has also been a hot month for revolution and insurrection and our people galvanizing and organizing. And so we just wanted to lift that up while, like I said, while we're still here in the month of August, that reparations includes the demand for freeing our political prisoners, our prisoners of war, and those who are in exile if they choose to come back. This is a high priority reparations demand, and it should always be included in the conversation with reparations. Again, I remember going to NCOBRA conferences and NCOBRA, and it was often, almost most of the time, we had a workshop or discussion on political prisoners and prisoners of war. And again, like I said, this is a critical issue. I also just wanted to let you know that I just spent last week in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention, going to as many reparations events as I could, participating, speaking at most of them as well. And so at some time in the near future, you can look forward to us bringing you a report back on the reparations movement as we interface with the Democratic National Convention in in Chicago. And so you've been listening to the Reparations Now podcast. This is your host, Brother Jumoke Ifetayo. We thank you for your time. We thank you for supporting our political prisoners and prisoners of war, learning more about Black August, engaging with Black August, and subscribing to this channel, supporting this channel, sharing it with your friends and family and comrades in this movement. Reparations now, reparations now, reparations now.
It's time. It's time. I know it's time. The generation. Oh, reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparations. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparations. Pay up, time to pay up. Yeah. Right now, reparations. Time for reparations. Right now, time for reparations. Time for reparations. Right now, time for reparations. Reparations for building this nation. Lynching and burning, castration. Selling children, family separation. Right now, time for reparations. Millions of slave ships landed, whipped, chained, and branded.